Well, playing Mike isn't such a dreamer as script writing Mike apparently is, and he is still very worried about our resource situation. Looking back at our resource table, while we technically have enough iron, in practice we don't really, and even in the most optimistic scenario described up until this point, we will still fail because we control only half of the total copper we need. And unfortunately, our technological options for resource discounts are depleted. The only way to bring the values of the required and the controlled resources closer together is to increase the number of resources we control. It is time to pack up our backpack with pipes again, as we're going out on a second exploration trip, and this time we will explore all the terrain we possibly can. We will be venturing out beyond the medium worms into the big worm territory, and perhaps even discover the first behemoth specimens. Now, we are not going out there because we think we can defeat them, but we just might be able to find a resource patch or two which are far enough away from any of those untouchable biter bases that, with the help of our old friend the efficiency module, we can extract some of that sweet distant iron, copper and oil without the local biters there noticing us. The rates at which we can extract those distant resources will be very much depending on the proximity of those resources to the nearest biter bases, and will be greatly influenced by the amount of strategically placed forests nearby those resources. Pollution works chunk-based in Factorio, so apparent distances can deceive. It is all about in which chunk the mining drills are, and in which chunk the biter bases and any pollution-absorbing forests are. The situation on the right seems much safer than the situation on the left, but if we look at the chunk grid, we see that we can actually extract many more resources per second from the left setup. The right one is actually plain out useless, despite the biters appearing to be further away. So, after we made the base safe against infiltrating biter expansions, and then took some time to fully grasp the sheer quantities of resources required even for a hard tech beeline off of this planet, we spent the next 7 hours exploring, on foot, the entire map, going as far out as to the point where we are physically blocked by the sheer density of giant biter bases where we cannot pass between undetected anymore. Now, some of you have been complaining about the lack of progress and gameplay footage in the last episode. So, let's cut right over to one of the many riveting action scenes this playthrough has to offer. Is it far back to home? Yeah, very far. 2.7 kilometers. So, now that everyone is satisfied, let's see what 7 hours of hardcore exploring gets us. Alright, that is a giant swath of land. And we have found many potentially accessible resources. But is this giant iron patch actually worth 20 million ore as displayed? No, we have to count these a bit different. A full belt of ore transports 15 ore a second, which is 900 a minute, or roughly 50,000 per hour. Or, and this is the benchmark number we're gonna be using, roughly a million ore per 20 hours. Given that we can only extract ore from the most bottom right chunk, we estimate that we can only access about 4 million ore from this patch, and extract it at a rate of no more than half a belt of ore, or else we will pollute the nearby biters. That means this patch is simply worth half a belt of ore for 160 hours. That doesn't make this ore patch worth the full 4 million even, as we can only start mining it after we have efficiency modules to put in these miners, or the biters will attack this mine faster than you can voice your opinion on the quality mechanics. And additionally, it will take a lot of time to set up and transport home all of the newfound distant resources from every desolated outcrop all around the entire planet. Counting as per usual optimistically, we might eventually have access to up to 6 belts of both copper and iron. Some of those will run out after a quick 80 hours of mining, but most will be able to provide resources during the entire estimated time we will spend on this planet. Let's summarize it as, if we can access 10 belts of resources from far outside the base this way, and we're aiming for a lowly 900 signs per minute, that makes it so that eventually up to a quarter of the required iron and up to half of the required copper can roll into the base from far, far away without decreasing the ore counts we have access to inside the base, which means that we will now also have exactly enough copper to get off of this planet. You know, optimistically speaking. But pessimistically speaking of it taking a lot of time to set up and transport home all of those newfound distant resources from every desolated outcrop all around the entire planet, those resources aren't going to stay accessible for much longer now, are they? You just spend an ungodly amount of time to protect all that land inside your base against biter expansions, but by exploring basically the entire accessible portion of the planet, you've just added tons of shiny green expansion chunks, and those are quickly going to get settled by biter expansions, which means not only will the biters settle right on top of your newfound ore patches, you won't even be able to walk over there anymore, as all the access roads will be blocked by shiny new biter bases before you're ready to go out there again to install your mining drills. By that time, the entire map is going to be a giant, continuous blanket of newly settled biter expansions. That is correct. And that is why we are going to have to travel around the entire map yet again, this time with our backpack full of pipes. And belts? Yep, it is time to deploy the Resource Protection Program. We are going to employ similar anti-biter expansion tactics like around our base, lowering the local land values all around the valuable resource patches, so that hopefully no biter expansions will settle closer to those resources than that the existing big biter bases already are. So again, we are littering pipes all around the place. But not only do we need to protect the resources themselves, we indeed also need to keep the access roads open between those resources and our main base. So, for the first time in the history of this playthrough, we are placing belts. It doesn't matter what we place in terms of biter expansion denial, so we might as well put some of the belts in place, which will hopefully someday transport resources to the home base. In about 100 hours from now. We apply the same logic to all the oil sources we found. Which means, yeah, we're back to placing pipes. Now, even assuming all of these resource spots remain unsettled for like 100 hours and 1,000 biter expansion attempts, we still haven't fully solved our resource situation, although we could likely sustain 600 to 700 SPM if all resource spots stay biter free zones. That sounds like a lot perhaps, but it's equivalent to 0.7 signs per minute in a normal game, roughly 70 times less than the 45 signs per minute which is the gold standard for the so-called early game. You know, which will encompass the first 200 hours or so of this playthrough. Anyway, I've got one more ace up my sleeve to improve our resource situation. But we cannot play that card until we've at least got some sort of an automated base going. So, that finally leads us to the 36-hour save game teased in the very beginning of this series. 36 hours before building a base, so that we could do all of the preparation work necessary to both keep the base biter expansion free and guarantee us access to enough resources to tag our way off of this planet. Controlling the evolution factor, and with that also the rate at which biters attempt expansions, has been the main driver behind not building a factory first, as it was of the utmost importance to not cross over the 50% evolution mark. It is only by producing absolutely nothing except the bare minimum required that we have been able to keep the evolution factor under the big biter threshold, and more importantly, big worm threshold. As at 50% evolution, new biter expansions will come with indestructible big worms. And while we did not have the ability to mess with the large, naturally spawned nests containing tons of big and even behemoth worms, we have been able to neutralize a fair few of biter expansions in the way of our goals, as those have so far been spawning with medium worms only. As those have so far been spawning with medium worms only. But that is about to change. I certainly hope I have done my homework correctly, as we're about to build a real, normal person factory. And that will quickly push us deep into big biter territory. And with that, there will be nothing I can do about the biters anymore ever again. Or is there? Find out next time.